Our next story is about cricket. Excitement is in the air. India is set to host the World Cup. The schedule has been released and the big headliner is the India-Pakistan match. It will be held in the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad. The first time in 7 years that India will be hosting Pakistan. And if social media is to be believed, it's not something that Pakistan is looking forward to. Regardless, one can expect all eyes glued to TV screens on the 15th of October when India and Pakistan clash on the field. Now, to give you an idea, in 2019, the India-Pakistan World Cup match drew 273 million viewers. But you see, this is merely a mega clash in terms of optics. On the field, India is far superior than its neighbour. After all, Pakistani cricket has a long list of problems, including a complacent board, coaching concerns and feuds between players. But optics or not, cricket for this subcontinent is more than a sport. It's also an overwhelming emotion, and often a story of sheer grit, of rags to riches. But we're not talking about India and Pakistan tonight. We're talking about Britain, the birthplace of cricket. In the early 18th century, it was a sport created for rich white landowners, codified to allow them to bet against each other, and exported around the world, usually at gunpoint, with the promise of civilizing so-called savage people. So surprise, surprise, that English cricket is no great equalizer. It's still not as progressive as many would like to believe. And England seems to have woken up to this fact, finally, thanks to a painfully frank wake-up call, a line in the sand, a humiliation. I'm talking about a report released by the Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket. It's a damning critique of British cricket, one of the most devastating ones so far. It draws on evidence from more than 4,000 sources, from players, coaches, administrators and fans. It looks into discrimination in the English game, and based on the survey, the report has documented inbuilt prejudice, laying bare the game's failings. It talks about a smorgasbord of problems, which are not limited to a few bad apples, not confined to pockets, but all pervasive. This report says racism is entrenched in cricket. It affects 87% respondents of Pakistani and Bangladeshi heritage, 82% people of Indian heritage and 75% of black respondents. And this discrimination affects the power structure within the game, where white male captains, coaches, chief executives and board chairs hold all the power. Let me give you some examples. South Asians make up 28% of the game's recreational pool, but only 2.8% of the sport's executive level positions. And that's not all. The report also says that English cricket is deeply sexist and elitist. In 2021, 58% of England male cricketers were privately educated, compared to 7% in the population at large. And these facts are incriminating, but they aren't new or hidden from plain sight. For years, critics have pointed them out. So why don't we see a change? For starters, the complaint system is confusing and defensive. So most victims suffer in silence. Also because these problems are not limited to cricket. They're rooted in our social fabric across the world. And we are no woke crusaders. But when a sport that should be a uniting force is cultivating an unsafe environment for thousands, it may be time to hold a mirror to that sport. Because the time for squeamishness is past. And if a diagnosis can be the first step of the treatment, this sport of cricket may just get its long-awaited level playing field.